Hello, everybody. We are live here on WaterCooler Wednesday with Steve Fredlund. Is it Fredlund? Fredlund?
It is. It's
Because
just Fredlund, which it seems like an easy name to pronounce, but for some reason it wigs people out a little bit.
it's so funny because it was like we've known each other for a while now, and I guess I've never said your last name. For a guy who goes by the Safari Dude, you don't have to use the person's last name so often. But
Right.
I am so excited to have Steve here. Steve and I are speaker buddies. Steve started a speaker group that he so graciously invited me into. And I said, Steve, I need you on the water cooler because, well, you'll see why. So Steve Fredlund, the Safari Dude, has 30 years of diverse leadership success. His work in HR analytics uncovered the surprising drivers of successful organizations. Steve's insights and methodology are fundamentally transforming how leaders build powerful teams. Steve earned an MBA and fellowship in the Society of Actuaries. He's a two-time TEDx speaker. And this is one of the really cool things about Steve is that he and I get along and I understand him when he talks, even though he's a trained actuary, a corporate actuary. So so that tells you something about him right there. Steve, welcome.
Thanks, David. Man, it's great to be here. Yeah, I consider myself a recovering actuary in the off chance that people can actually recover from being an actuary.
I can appreciate that, especially with my background in burnout research. I can
Yeah.
understand. So Steve, you know the drill. We start everybody off in this uncomfortable situation that we call 6 and 60. We're going to do 6 rapid fire questions. And we'll see how you do. We'll see if you can get them all answered and I can get them all asked in 60 seconds. And if not, then
Is this pass fail? So if
yeah,
I fail, I'm not welcome to the rest of the show. Is that how
then
that works?
then we just disconnect and that's it. That's and
Exactly.
and
Which I'm
before we start that,
which I'm
I
having
also
internet issues.
right, we'll give you an extra like 15 seconds for the internet issues right now. That's true.
Right.
So for the lag. But in the meantime, I did want to make sure to invite all of you who are watching live on LinkedIn, YouTube, um, uh, Twitter, Facebook, wherever else you might be watching live, to chime in, ask some questions. I'd like to know your answers to some of these questions and be part of the conversation. And if you aren't watching us live, but you're catching the replay, also add to the conversation because we'll continue to monitor those and be engaged within those conversations with you there. So, Steve, without further ado, are you ready?
I think so.
All right. Let me start the first question before I hit go. What is one thing that you would like to see stick around long after this pandemic?
The virtual meetings. As much as I'm having internet connections today, man, virtual meetings are so awesome. They're so much more efficient.
Right. When you're feeling overwhelmed or burned out, what do you do to reset and recharge?
I play disc golf.
Something I find fascinating about you is that in addition to disc golf, you're a poker player with 34 tournament wins, like a serious poker player. Apart from poker, what is the biggest risk you've ever took?
Leaving my corporate job to start working for myself and go into this crazy thing we call professional speaking.
Love it. Give us one notable trait of your favorite boss of all time.
Empathy.
Empathy. I typically hate this question, but being the Safari Dude, I feel like I can ask it. If you were an animal, what animal would you be?
Oh man, a cheetah, just because they can transform and they're so adaptable, they can kind of be what they need to be in the different situations.
Steve, I knew I loved you. My daughter Lily, 5 years old, my favorite kid. No, one of my favorite 5 kids. She she is obsessed with cheetahs. Everything in her bedroom is cheetah. She
Oh,
refers to herself as Cheetah Lita. That's pretty cool. But question number 6. Best piece of advice or wisdom you've ever received. What is it?
Always assume positive intent.
Ooh, I like that. And that's not always easy. So I really like
No.
that as a
Mm-mm.
goal.
Yeah, yeah.
Perfect.
I want that for people to, because I'm an actuary, right? I can be a little bit edgy, a little bit straightforward. I can be a little abrasive, if not that I want to be, but I just sort of am because of my personality, and I want people to assume that in me, and so I want to give that in return. At least always, whatever they say, at least kind of assume, start from a point of their motivations are pure, and then go from there.
That's great. That's great. Like I said, such a valuable lesson. So difficult to do, but you've
Hmm.
gotta it's like a muscle you have to work. I found that studying psychology really helps because you understand motivations are so complex and people are so complex that you kind of have to give people the benefit of the doubt. But like I said, easier said than done. So Steve, you completely failed 6 and 60, but that might be just because you threw me with the cheetah thing. I got all excited, so I'll take the L on that, and we can continue talking.
I got off to a bad start. I was too slow on the first couple. I tried to recover, but I couldn't recover in time.
Right, right. So right before we got on, besides for trying to figure out technical issues, I was telling Steve we're in this speaking group together, and I was saying how you think you know a guy, but then prepping for the water cooler, you really start to learn more and more about them and what they speak about and what makes them tick. And it was such a cool experience, kind of getting sort of that inside view of Steve, and I hope that you enjoy that today. But I do want to start with learning a little bit more about your history because I think we've got two pieces, right? We've got this business expertise, and then we've got the safari dude. So let's start with the business side. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey through um, corporate America and your business?
Yeah, so I grew up, loving math, and that was the thing. And but it turned out I didn't have enough personality to become an accountant, so I became an actuary instead, and spent about 30 years in the corporate world doing primarily actuarial things, which is a lot of math, it's a lot of projections, a lot of statistics, it's a lot of risk management, and so always in kind of non-traditional things. Just because I was able to talk, so I ended up being put into positions where that was a valuable commodity, and so I did a lot of things with things like capital markets, risk management, so hedging, buying and selling derivatives to offset risk, that sort of piece. Some stuff in marketing, and then toward the end of my career in the corporate world, I went into HR and started using data and analysis to figure out what's motivating people's behavior. So beyond our typical approach, which is anecdotal evidence or manager intuition, the challenge was, can we actually use data to understand what drives people to become more productive, more engaged, to stick around longer, some of those questions. And so that was a good chunk of my career at the tail end of my corporate life. And so that's what I did. That's what I'm trained in. And then about 4 years ago, went off on my own, did some coaching, consulting, those things. And I still do that, but I've shifted more to speaking.
Wow. So I know that it takes a very special person to be able to translate the data, to take raw data and translate it in a way that it is meaningful to the consumer and doesn't get completely watered down like you do in
Right.
pop psychology and whatnot. So for you to be able to um, be so analytical and left brained and then be able to translate that, it has got to be a unique skill set. That do you find that you use that now in your work?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think that was exactly what you were saying is, you've got all this data, all the analysis. I mean, it's really technical. And then, you go in front of a group of non-technical people and you have to explain the findings like HR or a board of directors or marketing team. And it was incredibly challenging. And I actually I have three kids, but I had twin boys who were about 9 or 10 years old at the time. And I would actually run stuff by them and say, do you
Uh,
understand this? And I know that's sort of cliche, but I would do it. And if they didn't understand it, then I thought I was kind of missing the mark. So that really taught me how to take technical things and communicate it. And now I think the challenge is, as a speaker, as you know, is how do we engage audiences? How do we be fun, exciting, and transformational and give them what they need? And so I have to transition now from becoming still too technical to becoming to really keep narrowing it down even further for audiences that aren't looking for technical things. But yeah, I think the blend of those skill sets is something I didn't realize was unique until I got a little further along in my career, and I realized, oh wow, okay, most people that are pretty technical really do struggle in paring it down and coming up with a real meaty sort of takeaway. And a lot of times you've run into speakers who don't have anything that's of consequence in what they say. And so I think being able to blend those two things has really served me well.
Yeah, I'm right with you. I think that my frustrations within the speaking world is that you have people that say a lot of nothing very eloquently. And so
Right.
you get feel real pumped up and motivated, and then you go back to the office and you don't know what to do with that. And then you have talking heads who are giving some real great data and some real great advice, but they're doing it in a way that's not really capturing or motivating the audience to take action. So I think that's an extremely uh, valuable place for a speaker to be. I think it's essential for speakers to be in that spot, and you certainly are.
And that's right in
So
your sweet spot too, right? I mean, I know that you're the PhD level stuff and taking all this stuff that if you were to actually talk about all the things that you were learning, David, we'd be like, oh man, overwhelmed, fire hose. I don't know what to do with it. But I know that's your sweet spot too, is taking that down and now saying, here's what you need to know, here's what you need to change. And so I'm watching you as somebody who's been on this journey a little longer than myself to see how you're doing it.
yeah, well, unlike you have your twins. For me, I have my wife, and I just recognize when she starts glazing over, and I'm like, okay, we'll start pulling this back. Although at this point, I have talked her ear off so much with this stuff that it's just she's now an expert. She's got to get her, she's got to be awarded some sort of degree in IO psychology.
Well, if
Just
you're unable to
for
do
putting
your
up.
event, you can just step in and do the event for you. So that's pretty
It,
cool.
she could probably give my talks word for word. So all right, so that's the work journey, and it's fascinating, and it's such an important angle that you've been on that super analytical end, but also within the world of HR and learning how people tick, and what we're going to talk about today, a little bit about teams and happiness, and really sort of the hard pieces of the softer skills. I think all of that is incredibly valuable, but and unique, right? But you take it a step further and are incredibly unique as the Safari dude, right? Right, the honorary IO degree. Brittany, that's the word I was looking for. Honorary. Perfect. Thank you. Yeah, let's who do we petition for that? I don't know. So um but Steve, tell us a little bit about the Safari stuff. When did you go on your first safari? How did this all become part of your identity and story?
Yeah, and I kind of went in initially to a safari reluctantly. So, in addition to doing my corporate stuff, I started doing nonprofit humanitarian work in Rwanda, Africa. So, I started a nonprofit and we took trips there to do humanitarian work. And on that first trip, I had people saying, you're going to want to end your trip in a couple days of safari. And I was like, no, this isn't a vacation, right? We're going there to serve people, to help people, to get their stories, to bring back and get funding to help transform a community in northern Rwanda. And so I kind of went in reluctantly. They said, you're going to need this. You're going to need a couple of days to decompress from what you're going to see, because you're going to see some tough stuff. And you're going to want a couple of days to just laugh with your team. And you're going to want a couple of days to, kind of transition back to reality and support the local economy and all of these things. I'm like, okay, fine. I'll go, whatever, fine. Well, it was transformational. It was life-changing, above and beyond just, I got to see a giraffe. It was actually quite transformational. Hey, Derek, good to see you, man. It was quite transformational. And so then what happened is at the end of every one of our trips, and I would take a total of 4 trips, we would add a safari on. And in a couple of cases, we had a couple different safaris on the back end of that thing. And I moved from feeling guilty about vacationing to, no, this is part of the experience. This is part of understanding the whole story of Africa. This is it's a one-time experience, right? And so, yeah, at the end of the day, I've been on 6 safaris with different teams on all of those things. And it's just transformed me in so many different ways. And of course, I didn't realize it at the time, but boy, it was building up this this wonderful catalog of amazing stories and experiences that we had that I can now use to communicate some of these ideas about leadership, some of these ideas about the HR data, and some of those things. So it serves this great purpose of they're compelling stories, right? And I've lived them firsthand. It's not somebody else's story,
Right.
and then from those stories we emerges these unbelievably cool insights.
Right. So you are, besides from my mother-in-law, you are like the king of puns and things like that. You like your titles are very catchy, and you are the peeps in your Jeep guy, right? You're
Yeah,
constantly talking about how do we get the right peeps in our Jeep. And again, this is tying together that metaphor of the safari. So um, tell us about, I guess, the first time that this clicked. Like, can you share a story with us from Safari that you're like, this looks a lot like The Office?
yeah, I have so many, and I use a couple in the talk or whatever. But one example of the importance of having the right peeps in our Jeeps, like that's it. That's what drives happiness. That's what drives effectiveness. All of those things is kind of when you don't see it. Like there's that frustration, right? We've all been frustrated by people. I've frustrated people. We've had frustrated people on our team, managers, leaders, volunteers, right? So you kind of recognize maybe that's the wrong peep for the Jeep. And so, I mean, one example, we were looking for the lions that had just been reintroduced into Akagera National Park in Rwanda. So Rwanda went through a genocide. The whole government infrastructure collapsed. The national park system collapsed. About 20 years later, South Africa donated lions to this park in Rwanda
Hmm.
because all the lions were killed either by poachers or by farmers who had settled there trying to protect their livestock. And so this was this tremendously historic event, right? We're not just going on safari to see animals, to see things. We're now seeing these lions that had literally been reintroduced a couple of weeks before. It's like a milestone in the rebirth of a nation, this huge, amazing opportunity, right? And one of the people that was with us was totally disengaged. I won't get into all the details, but just disengaged. They were on their phone, checking email, and we're like all like scanning the horizon with binoculars, trying to look for these lions because it's so historic and cool, of course. And
They're
so,
stuck in their phones as you're driving
yes,
around looking for lions.
they're
That,
sitting down checking up on email, and we're
wow.
looking for these lions, and it's like, what's going on here? And so part of it was that frustration that we feel in the office sometimes when we have a disengaged employee. But part of that, what came out of that was that realization that he was on his safari, he wasn't on our safari, right? He was on his mission. He wasn't on our mission. And so his mission was perfectly legitimate. It was perfectly valid. He just wanted to see a few giraffes and kind of write home about it, take a few pictures, say he went on safari. And that wasn't lined up with our mission, which included seeing these historic lions. And so the question is he bad? Is there something wrong with him? Or is it just I, as the leader, I chose poorly, not realizing that how critical it was to have his mission lined up with our mission. So he was a great peep. I love the guy dearly, but he wasn't the right peep for our Jeep for that mission. And so I think that's just one example of realizing and starting to see those things that are going. This reminds me of work, being frustrated with somebody. And it's not that that person's a bad person. It's because they're being asked to do the wrong thing, or they're in the wrong company, the wrong organization. They're in the wrong seat of the Jeep, whatever it might be, whatever analogy you want to use. And so that's one example that I use to kind of drive this home.
Huh. I love that example. I love the idea of he's not the wrong peep. He's just the wrong peep for this Jeep, for this mission. And
Yeah.
so often when we let somebody go, it's this contentious thing, or we go in there with all these nerves, and it's a horrible thing, and it's a judgment on that person's character and identity, and often, way too often, it's felt that way by both management and the individual being let go. But you bring out a beautiful point that it's just not the right fit. It's not the right alignment, right? So, how do you find the person with the right alignment? What could you have done differently in order to make sure that this person wasn't sort of detracting from everybody else's experience?
Yeah, in that particular case, he was a late addition to the team. He wasn't somebody that was plugged in with all we were doing in humanitarian work. He wasn't really plugged in. He just heard from somebody that we were doing this, and he, in his own words, I had always wanted to see a giraffe.
Hmm.
And so, he approached me. We had a great conversation. I really liked the guy, and so I brought him into the team without doing kind of really that hard work of saying, well, what are you really trying to get out of it? What is your hope for this? And what are we trying to get out of it? What is our hope? And recognizing that there's a dissonance here. And so it really is on me and doing the homework up front of making sure he's the right peep for our Jeep. That sort of piece. And so how that translates to the business world is the same sort of thing. I think what happens when we hire somebody is we do SKAs, right? Skills, knowledge, and abilities. We don't have a community of people built up that are already aligned and connected with who we are and what we're trying to do. So we put a job posting out, people fill out an application, and I can go into the whole reason why we do this because it's easier and automated. But the reality is we're not hiring people that are aligned and connected to us. We're hiring people based on their skills, knowledge, and abilities. And the data is so clear that there's no correlation between somebody's, even at high skills, knowledge, and abilities, and eventually their productivity, engagement, and retention. The data is so clear that those are not related. What's related is if you hire people who are aligned and connected, and there's a really high correlation between their productivity, engagement, and retention there. And so what we need to do on the front end is start focusing more on their alignment and their connection, more so than what they can do right now. Because people that are aligned, that are connected, that are on mission with us, they're going to learn the skills. They're going to develop the abilities that they need to do the job. You can't teach alignment and connection. That's just part of who people are. And so the big challenge is how do we do that? How do we get to the point where we've developed a community of people that we know are aligned and connected? So when the time comes and we say, hey, we've got a seat open in our Jeep, they're clamoring to get in. We don't do that. I think that's what we need to do on the front end is have that community of people inside and outside of our organization that love our mission, that are connected to our mission, they're engaged with our mission, even though they're doing something totally different. And then one day we say, you know what? Hey, I've seen how engaged you are. We actually have a seat open now. I know it's not what you're doing. And they're the kind of people that go, you know what? I've never even thought about that, but I'm at the right stage in my career where maybe it's time to do something I just love to do. So I think if we can start doing that rather than being so knee-jerk reacting and then focusing all of our abilities on what their skills, knowledge, and abilities are, I think that's how we get the right peeps in our Jeep. And those are the people that become happy. Those are the people that are productive, engaged. They stick around longer. And guess what? When they're happy and they're productive and they're engaged, we're happier as the leader. We're more successful. We're happier. It's the safari with the top down, the wind blowing through our hair, rather than, misery, which is what some of us, I think we just exchange our happiness for leadership. And we think that's just part of the deal. It's not.
And not just happy, but more effective. And I want to get to that.
Powerful.
But there's also these two things that pop into my head listening to you talk about this. And one is, how do we get beyond, I guess, how do we get to the point where everyone's being honest and upfront and really the interview is going both ways? Because right now, businesses are still recovering from the Great Resignation. We've got quiet quitting. We've got all of these issues, and we're understaffed. And then when somebody who seems good comes along, we tell them everything is great here. Come on in. And then that individual is looking at the horizon and sees that, holy cow, there's this recession that we might already be in. Who knows if I'm going to have an opportunity for a job later? I just need to take whatever I get. So they put out their best and try to. The goal comes to just impress the other side and win the job or win the candidate as an employee. How do you get beyond that?
Yeah, I mean, that is the great question. And especially in this time where we have so many empty seats in our Jeeps, we just need butts in our seats. We just need peeps in our Jeeps, right? And so exactly that. So our whole challenge, our whole mandate is to fill up the seats. And we don't really care who, we want the best people, but we just want butts in the seats because we're overwhelmed, right? We're facing burnout, all the things that you talk about, all of those things. And like you said, they're going, I just want to either get out of my current situation. I want a job. And they might be even looking at it as just a stepping stone. They want something. And so then it comes down to the system, right? If our system is that I just want people in the Jeep somewhere, and they're just like, I want any job. Well, then it's going to work, right? They're going to take the job and we're going to fill the seats,
Right.
and then we're going to be miserable because they're the wrong peeps, right? We're like, now we're frustrated, then we're mad at them, like you said, we're mad at them. They're doing exactly what they intended to do, is just get a job to get some income, right? They're on a safari, right? They're on their safari, they're not on ours. And so what we need to do is we need to reshape that and kind of transform our thinking around that, rather than we have an opening, we need anybody here who's able to do the job, and hey, I just need any job. We need to be more constructive about how we develop our procedures. And so part of that is we de-emphasize SKAs. And like I mentioned, we start building this community. I think if we can get the people on the front end, those are then the people we can draw from because they're already connected. But if we don't have that, then it comes down to how do we select? How do we interview? What does that process look like? And we move away from this whole rubric sort of thing of, oh, okay, you're proficient in PowerPoint, that's 2 points. You're 7 years of experience, that's 3.5 points. This whole grading mechanism. And we figure out a way to actually get to the heart of the people, what they're trying to do in their life, how they're actually wired. And people that are smarter than me can develop these sorts of things, but it comes down to asking the right questions. And one of the things that I've noticed that a lot of people do, leaders I've had, people that I've talked to, is they ask these terrible leading questions, right? Like, okay, they're like, so are you aligned with our mission? Yeah. Or like, if they need somebody that's organized, they're like, so do you consider yourself an organized person? Think about what's happening here. Like, they want a job. What's the answer going to be, whether they are or not? Yes. And it's in the eye of the beholder. I think we need to get more creative in our questioning and our discussions about this. Instead of asking them if they're organized, we say, hey, tell me a little bit about how you keep your family of 5 in order. And if they're like, well, I don't know, we're just kind of all over the place, and every day it feels like we just don't know what's coming or going. Well, they're not really organized. If they're the kind of person that says, well, here's the deal. We got a whiteboard, we got a Google Calendar, we got red dots for Jimmy and blue dots for Sarah. And, they're kind of have this whole system. Then you're like, cool. I mean, that's a different way of approaching it. It's kind of a fun example, but it's not, are you organized? And the same thing with our alignment and our connection. What do you know about us? Why does that excite you? Rather than saying, hey, our mission is to, change the world through medical, engineering. Do you like that? Yes. So I think we need to be smarter. And I know Derek was on here too. He's one of these guys that really understands the hiring and recruiting process. And I bet he would say the same thing. Like, we need to move past just checking boxes. Are they, do they have this degree? Do they not have this degree? Do they have this level of experience or this level of experience? That's bound to get us, it's just a crapshoot then. It's bound to get us people that are not the right fit for our Jeep. And they're going to cause even more discouragement, right, to us as leaders than if the seat was empty, frankly.
Yeah, I was once sitting in. I was consulting for an organization and sitting in on their interviews, and the manager literally said, "We need people who are reliable. Would you say that you're reliable?" Like, it happened in real life right in front of me, and my mouth just dropped open. I had no words.
But it adds zero value to the conversation, right?
Right.
I mean, unless they say no, but they're not going to say no. They're going to say yes. I'm very
right. Barring being hooked up to a lie detector test as they answer that question, I don't know. Right. I don't know what that's going to do. But so then the other piece of this that would concern me would be if we move away from these KSAs and these specific check the box and do they have this and do they have that. Then the concern is one of diversity and inclusion in terms of, do we end up with people who, anytime we talk about culture fit, it's like, what does that fit mean? And I know that you talk about having people who are not going to be yes men and women. And so how does that, can you speak a little bit to that?
Absolutely, yeah. If we're stripping away some of that other stuff and saying we want people who are aligned and connected, and we interpret that as we want people who see the world the same way that we do, that's a big problem. I think we want people that are on the same mission, but willing to challenge the status quo, willing to look at it from a different perspective. And sometimes that's hard to know, are they that kind of person or not? And that's where diversity, equity, and inclusion comes in, right? Let's get a team of people that have different, they're different genders, they're different perspectives, they're different ages, they're different, experiences. All of these things come into play there, right? And so that's where we build that sort of a team. And I think that's where leaders, I think one of the biggest things that a lot of leaders do wrong is they hire people that think like them. And they're not doing it Well, sometimes they're doing it intentionally. Sometimes they're not. They connect with somebody, right? When you're interviewing people, you connect with people who are like, oh yeah, I play poker. Oh yeah, I've got that background. And so you really like that person. And that's good for chemistry. But at the end of the day, that could be bad for accomplishing the mission. So it is a challenge, but that's why you're a leader, right? That's why you're the leader, because you're the one that's supposed to advance the mission. You're supposed to move toward the vision. And I think what can stunt growth more than anything is getting the wrong peeps in your Jeep, or getting the right peeps in your Jeep that are just thinking exactly like you, that are yes men and yes women. So it's a great point that you bring out. And I think some of that just comes naturally by getting a diverse population.
Yeah, and I think Brittany, tagging on to what you said earlier, sometimes you kind of have to have an more effective process, but also I think slowing things down actually helps a lot, and it runs counter to what we think we need, but it really does seem to help, doesn't it?
Yeah, and it's tough, right? I mean, I'm not going to downplay it. I've been consulting with small businesses who are just struggling to get employees, just to get any butts in the seats, right? And so I understand that tension between the two, but they will tell you, the ones that I've worked with, they will tell you hiring fast was such a mistake.
Hmm.
Once in a while you have that perfect person, but they get people in, and then they try to train them, and they're not engaged, they're not productive, right? I mean, the average American worker is productive 30% of the day, and one third of American workers are engaged with their jobs. You keep bringing in people like that, it's just going to cause misery as a leader. If you can somehow figure out a way, and there's no guarantees, right? If you can slow the process down, get the right people, search for the right people, work your network, find people who are aligned and connected, find people who have been able to learn things in the past if they don't have those skills now. Find that right person who's going to come alongside you and say, I want to help you accomplish that mission. I'm not going to think like you, but I'm going to help you achieve it. Man, that is gold. And harder to find. I think it's harder a little bit, but it's also just a different approach to it, right? I mean, I think we think of the SKAs or the KSAs. I know they went through the whole naming change or whatever, because it's important which order the acronym is in. I mean, we do that. And we think that's easier because we can automate a system around that. We can ask questions about, how many years of experience and proficiency in PowerPoint and what level of degree, and then we can use our automated system to tell you who our best candidates are. So we think that's easier. And I would say that this other paradigm is not harder. It's just different. It starts with figuring out, like, what is our rallying cry? What is our mission? Getting people aligned with that, and then giving them opportunities to get in. And so I'm straying from your question a little bit, but yeah, I think slow it down, get the right people, get the people that are going to make you happy, not because they think like you, but because they are just as passionate about your mission as you are. And you might say, am I that passionate about my mission? Well, that's another question for you to ask yourself as a leader. If you're not passionate about the mission and vision, are you in the right Jeep? That's a whole nother can of worms. But if you are honestly passionate about your mission and your vision and what you're trying to accomplish, when you get people that are lined up with that, even if they're not as skilled as you'd like them to be, that is going to make you more passionate, more effective, happier, all of those things.
Wow. So yeah, and I think in this tight labor market, where it's so hard to find good people, I think if you take some of that money and throw it at training after the fact, you can really compete in a market that's really hard to compete in right now.
Yeah, and from a pure competitive perspective, how many people are out there that are great, amazing people that are totally disengaged from their jobs because their leadership is not on mission? They have a lot of empty seats. There's great people that are out there, not that you always want to poach people, but that are looking for a mission-driven leader that's going to matter, where they can feel a sense of belonging, where they can be part of something bigger than themselves. And so, yeah, maybe there's not a lot of people that are out of work right now. That's who we're trying to hire. We're trying to hire the people that are out of work. There's a lot of people that are in jobs. I was one of them, right? That are just looking for an opportunity to matter, that's looking for an opportunity to be part of something bigger than themselves, to belong and drive after a mission and a vision. Those people are out there. Well, how do you find them? You're not going to do it through a job description looking for somebody that can type 70 words a minute, right? That's not how you're going to find them. You're going to find them by getting your rallying cry out there about who you are and having people go, ooh, bat signal, what's that? Somebody is really looking to change the world in a way that aligns with who I am. Who is that? What are they doing out there? And then maybe, just maybe, they say, you know what? This is a risk. This is a risk, but I'm just not satisfied in this Jeep anymore. This is not giving me life. I'm just running out the clock here. I want to matter. And so then they connect with you. So I think it's a big paradigm shift, but I don't think it's any harder. I think it's just different.
Yeah, and I think it becomes so important. Past guests on the show include Tate Linden was on recently, and also Brittany Eisenman, who's commented a couple times today on this episode. But they work together on specifically that the alignment around organizational integrity, and
Mm.
how important it is that not only that you know your mission, you know what you're about, but that you also represent that in a truthful way. That it's not just the core values on the wall. And Brittany, let me know if I'm misrepresenting this at all. But isn't that such an important piece that we first of all know who we are, and second of all are honest and transparent about who we are.
Yeah, and 10 years ago, I might have been rolling my eyes at you because I'm an actuary, right? I would have rolled my eyes at this whole mission-driven leadership, alignment-centric, personality, know thyself, know thy team, all that stuff. Like, because I was so analytical and I was so trained in this, I might have been rolling my eyes at you, honestly. But my eyes have been open over the last 5 to 10 years on my own journey, but also journeying with other small business owners. And now, kind of doing what I'm doing now with consulting and things. I mean, this is huge. This is really it. And I think when you one of the 6x60 questions you asked me was a characteristic of a leader. That leader that I was thinking of at that time is somebody who was completely aligned. They were in the actuarial world, but I think part of what made them my favorite leader was that they were on mission and they were aligned and they knew themselves and all those things. And so, yeah, we were doing technical stuff, but we were super aligned. So to your point there, I mean, know what you're trying to do, know your vision, know your mission, and really know yourself. And are you aligned with that thing? And if you are, go after it. And you are going to attract people that are also attracted to that mission. When you are driven by skills, knowledge, and abilities, you're going to attract people who are also driven by skills, knowledge, and abilities. And maybe that's fine in your little world, but if you're trying to change the world, if you actually have a mission that matters, that's not going to get the job done, and that's not going to excite you, and eventually you're going to just be disengaged yourself. But man, know what your mission is and go after it. And I could do a little tangent on mission statements, but I'll stop there because I'm getting all worked up.
So no, I love that you're getting worked up, and it brings on this question because you're talking about being an actuary, and like rolling your eyes at this sort of thing. And I know when you first entered the speaking world and you were discovering, like really started talking about happiness, and it was like, well, what is happiness? So we've had a past guest, Brooklyn Descent, who works on happiness, right? Well, Brooklyn is a comedian. She's like way out there, like just like a ball of energy, etc. That happiness looks very different from yours. What is the difference in those two types of happiness? And I guess like with where do you find happiness, and how does an employer engage with that type of happiness when it's not the extroverted all over the place, like really excited and excitable type of happiness, but it's something a little bit deeper.
Yeah, I think that is it. And that's kind of what I struggled with when I first said, I'm on a journey to find happiness, right? That's been part of my journey 5-10 years, and I've made some headway, but that's what I want to help other people do, is find that happiness too. And yes, as I started exploring the whole speaking thing, you talk to people that are like, oh, what you should do is you should wear a big yellow hat and a red tie. And I'm like, it does work for some people, but that is just not me. Like I
Yeah,
really
don't
am.
do that.
Yeah, don't do that. That'd be off brand for me, right?
Yeah.
And so yeah, I mean, how do you define happiness is critical, and for me, it really is that contentedness of feeling like I am on mission, like I'm doing what I love to do, what I'm meant to do, all of those things, and that is incredibly different for different people. And that's when this message of, okay, as leaders, how do we become happier? We become happier by knowing, as you said, knowing what our mission is. Or what? Okay, what is that? If you don't know, take some time, figure that out. What is your mission? And then surrounding yourself with people who are also on mission, who are going to encourage you, and you kind of have that shared passion together and go after it. But that looks incredibly different for other people too. Like you mentioned, introvert, extrovert. Some people are motivated. What honestly makes some people happy is money. It does. And that's fine. That's not what makes me happy, but that's what makes people happy. If that's what makes you happy, know it. Go after it. Surround yourself with people who are going to help you make more money if that's truly going to make you happier. Is it being surrounded by family all the time? Is it being off in the woods alone by yourself? Like, what truly makes us happy? And I think that's a huge question that, as I've worked with people, most people don't know. And I had to ask myself that same question years ago. Well, what really makes me happy? I know what should make me happy, right? My job that I currently have, right? I'm an actuary. I'm making a lot of money, and I've got 3 kids that all love me, and my wife still loves me. We've been married a long time, and I have this great community, and that should make me happy, but it's not. So do I sit there? Do I live in that what should make me happy? I mean, I talk about this, and I'm using the word SHOULD, but we should on ourselves all the time, right? That's what we do. What makes us happy? A lot of us don't know. We know what people expect to make us happy. We know what we should do. We know what the default is. But a lot of times what our misery lies in the fact that we don't really know what makes us happy. And I think we need to figure that deal out and then become part of an organization that's aligned with that, and then surround yourself with people that are also aligned with that. And man, happiness goes through the roof at that point. You can't even explain it at that point. It's so good because you're on mission and other people are on mission with you. I don't even know if I answered your question, David, but that's where
Well, I think it seems counterintuitive in some ways, right? Because to find happiness through your team, you'd think you'd want everybody like you and everybody gets along all the time. But there is that sort of conflict that you need to welcome into the team, right?
Yep.
And what does that look like? How do you find happiness in conflict?
You find it, you go one level higher. We are bound by being on mission together. We are bound by having the same vision together. And this other stuff, we've created that culture where this other stuff, this is just fighting for the right mission and the right vision, right? This conflict is conflict between methodology. It's not conflict between our goal. And I think that's where you try to differentiate that. And as a leader, you set the tone for that. Say, I want to hear different ideas because this is not about me being right. This is not about doing my way. It's not about doing your way. It's not about all being in agreement on how we should carry everything out. It's not making sure that we all have the same idea for strategic planning and budgeting and who we should hire. Let's get aligned on what we're trying to do, what our mission is. And that's why that clarity of that is so critical, because all of that conflict is about how we do things. And, I'll expand a little bit. I mean, the political world, right? I mean, we have all of this stuff, and I'm not going to get into it, David, don't worry. But the idea is hopefully, my hope is that everybody wants what's best for America, what's best for the world, what's best for our communities, what's best for people, what's best for humankind. Like, my hope is that is really what's motivating all of us. Mm-hmm. So then we should be fighting over how we're doing it. But I don't hear enough talk that says, we are ultimately on the same page here. We're ultimately on the same team because we want what's best for humanity. And now we're just fighting over how. That's fine. Fight over how. Let's fight over it. Let's figure it out. Let's wrestle with it. Let's get people's opinions, but let's tie it back to something higher than that particular conflict. And so for you, I think how do we overcome that conflict in the workplace? We overcome it by making sure that we're surrounded by people who are aligned with the same mission. And then we just set the tone and we're honest about it. This is all okay, but assume positive intent on my hand. Assume positive intent on your hand, because I believe that you are ultimately trying to make the best decision that's going to achieve the mission. Now, if I sense that you are motivated by something other than our mission and vision, that's where that's a different sort of conflict and a problem that we have.
Right. So and then the leader needs to take action, right?
Yeah.
So I love that you brought in that broader reality, looking, and it ties into your original from the 6 and 60 session where you said that the best piece of advice you have ever gotten is to just assume the best in everybody. But it seems like that's not happening anywhere near what it used to be, right? So one key thing that I bring up in my talks a lot is that one of the main ingredients of burnout is cynicism, right? So it's not by accident that we're seeing this incredible rise in cynicism. And on top of it, we're seeing record levels of incivility at work and beyond. And so how do you gain that buy-in from your people when they're coming too often from a starting point of distrust and a starting point of cynicism, um, where they don't get that you're really about what you say you're about.
Yeah, I think you just have that conversation, and I know a series of conversations really where you even address it and you say, "Hey, we are all living in a world right now that's incredibly cynical. We are questioning everybody's motives on either side of the aisle, whether it's and we're athletes or whatever. Like we're rolling our eyes, because we just assume that they're just after their own money, and that might be the case. We don't really know what's going on there, but that's the world that we're all coming from. But in this team, it's going to be different, and in this team, we are about the mission. We're about the vision. I'm going to tell you right now, if I'm doing anything that's out of line from the mission and vision, you have the right to tell me that I'm doing something that's out of line. But my motivations are nothing but accomplishing that mission, accomplishing that vision. Yes, I'm the leader. I'm paid like a leader. I have the power and the influence of a leader, and I'm going to have opportunities to interact with people that you're not going to have those opportunities to do that with. But my motivation is pure. And if you sense it's not, let's have that conversation. And I'm going to assume the same thing with you. You have a different personality. You have, all of these things, but we're going to do this and we're going to figure out a way to stay in alignment with that mission. And everything we do, whether it is our hiring practices, whether it's our onboarding, whether it's our performance management, compensation, it's all going to be filtered through the lens of that overall mission and vision. And I think some people are going to keep rolling their eyes and they're not the right peeps for your Jeeps. But I think that's the best we can do. And I'd love to hear more input from the people that are listening to this on how do we do that? Because I think that's a critical question, because you're right. We're living this two dichotomies, this one world where everything is cynical, and depending on your news source and your people that you're surrounded with, you're going to get deeper and deeper and deeper into that cynicism. And then you come to this world and you're like, okay, disconnect. So people are either they're not going to be able to get out of that mode and they're going to stay cynical, or they're going to see your organization, your group as an oasis in the desert, as something different. And that's going to attract people. Once you ring that bell, once you showed it from the rooftop that you're different, that your mission, that your culture is different, people are going to find that oasis in the desert. And people out here are going to keep rolling their eyes at everything in the world and at you, but you have to be okay with that. And so I think it's easier said than done. And I don't mean to be flippant about how you do that, but I think it comes down again to that communication, again to being really focused on your mission and vision. And I think you'll know pretty quickly who are those folks.
Yeah, I think you nailed it you hit the nail on the head when you said it's easier said than done. And I
Yeah.
think that maybe doing is the key. That every conversation you have and every action that you have is going to look differently, if you're taking an approach like Steve. So when you walk into an organization, I know just through our relationship, that everything just feels incredibly authentic, and I always feel that you care and are a
Mhm.
giver and you're trying to support, and it nothing ever feels transactional or like you're trying to get something for nothing, which I guess maybe that's the opposite of transactional, but it never everything always feels authentic. and
Mhm.
and I guess if you start that way, people will eventually catch on to that.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think it's being, whether you are an authentic person or not, or whatever, but I think it's being authentic to who you are. And I think that's what I've had to learn over the last 5 to 10 years of doing this. I've in the corporate world, you're sort of expected to be a certain way. And I struggled with that all the time. It wasn't about being right or wrong. It's just, this isn't who I am. And so since I've left some of those positions, I'm now able to be who I am, and just like it or not, this is who I am. This is just who I am.
I like it.
Good, bad, or ugly, and it's gonna. What it's done is attract people like you who are the same way, right? If I was being something different, like I'm going to start a speaking mastermind, and because I'm supposed to do it this way, I'm not going to get people like in our group, Simon, Alina, and Jay, and you, who are all authentic people pursuing it and care about each other and that sort of thing. And I would end up being miserable,
Hmm.
right? Because now I'm surrounded by people that aren't even like me. And so I do think that's where it starts. You have to be authentic with who you are. And that starts with being clear on who you are. Like, again, just like we don't know what makes us happy, a lot of us don't know who we are. And imagine the situation where you are free to be truly and authentically who you are. That's what I'm trying to live into and lean into. That's what I'm trying to work with leaders to live into and lean into. And it might not be pretty, but it's authentic. And you're going to attract other people who are authentically drawn to that as well. And that's going to make you happier.
Yeah, your the way you identify happiness uh, recalls a lot for me, as I research meaningful work,
Mhm.
The existentialist view of burnout is that we all look for a sense of significance from our work, and
Mhm.
when we don't find that, that's when we burn out. But we thrive when we do, and it's
Yeah.
supported. It's such a deeper sense of happiness, and I think it speaks maybe to a different person, but I think both ways that I view happiness in my head, I think are really important, and help a lot in the workplace. But yours really cuts deep,
Yeah, I think
and I think it's people are in need
they're
of
both
that.
consistent, right? They're both consistent with that. And I think at the ultimately what it is stripping away what you think should cause you happiness. Like I ended up not being happy in my environment. Some things changed, and there's some things out of my control. But ultimately, I wasn't also happy in doing some of the analytical stuff I was doing.
Hmm.
Does that mean everybody should grow up and as they get older, they don't like doing analysis and data and statistics? No. Like there are people that love that. They've been doing the exact same job for 40 years and they absolutely love it. There's nothing wrong with that if that's authentically truly who they are and what they love to do. So I think that is really what we're getting at here is know thyself, know what's going to make you happy, and then go after it. Right. As far as I know, I've got one shot at this deal, and I'm 52 now, and I wish I would have learned this 25 years ago. But at this point, and I'm not saying it flippantly, like go after what makes you happy. Like
Right.
like oh, give away everything, don't care about anybody, be incredibly selfish. Well, if that's who you are, go after. But I mean, figure that out. What really makes you happy. And like you said, I'm working 100 hours a week because I love what I'm doing. I love the opportunity to connect with people, to connect with leaders, to learn from them, to share what I've learned about, analytics and leadership and all those things. I love it. And I don't mind working at all. But when you're in a job that you hate, it's just it's the 30% productivity. It's the 1 in 3 engaged sort of stuff.
Right. And I love that you pointed to the fact that it can change over time.
Yeah.
And team dynamics will change over time, and what I want for my life will change over time. And so this is something that morphs over time. So you don't just because it works now always think back to the golden age, right?
Right.
And stick to it as people start like growing apart, or they don't feel challenged anymore, etc. I think you lived a really incredible career before now.
Yep.
When I was looking at your bio and the inside scoop that you gave me, starting with catching gophers or something, and like like your life is so eclectic, and there's so many things that you seem to find passion in. Not that I'm saying you found passion in collecting gophers, but maybe. No judgment here. But
Heck yeah.
but that there's different things that you're passionate about, and at different times. And I think career changing at this stage of your life is modeling like some really gutsy behavior, like you said, biggest risk you ever took.
Yeah.
And I think maybe that's part of this whole path to happiness too. Not that the people you speak to should all quit their jobs. That you're going
Right.
to help them stay in their jobs, but
Correct. Yeah, no, I think people are like worried because I'm going to say, "Oh, quit your job to be happier." No, that is not exactly. That's not what we're saying at all. We're saying get aligned, really understand what we're all in the Jeep together doing, and
yeah,
that's going to give us life and energy. And I think just a quick tangent on that. One of the things that I discovered about myself, I guess it's always been part of my life from trapping gophers early on through theater to all the stuff that I'm doing now is I've always been multi-passionate. I love having a number of things going on and I love trying things and doing new things and all that sort of stuff. And I always felt apologetic for that. Like, when you're in the business corporate world or whatever, and be like, okay, I'm doing capital markets hedging, now I'm in HR, now I'm doing workforce planning, all those things. I think some people say that's great experience, but there is a pool of people, especially in HR, that'll feel like, okay, well, figure out what you want to do.
hmm,
You don't know what you want to do. We can't trust you with leadership because you don't know what you want to do. And maybe that's fair. But what I found over the last 5 years in my own journey of discovery to happiness is I'm multi-passionate and I'm going to lean into it. I'm not going to apologize for that anymore. Now, not everybody's multi-passionate. I'm not suggesting you are. But yes, you know what? I love speaking. I love consulting. I love playing poker. I love playing disc golf. I love playing chess. I love hanging out and watching a football game. I love going to a baseball game. I love all of those things. Well, what do you love more? I don't know. I love it all. And you know what? Next week it might be different. I might not play disc golf anymore. I might take up, lacrosse. Who knows with me? Like, that's the danger of being multi-passionate. But my overall point is, for whoever's listening and for all of us, is figure out who we are and lean into it. Like, don't apologize for who you are. Just try to seek happiness and surround yourself with the right people who are going to encourage you in that path, and not take away from your happiness.
That's a great place to leave off here. Although there's so much still unsaid, but I think that you may have been the first person in the English language to ever say, and I wrote down the first couple words. I'm going to have to go back to capture the rest, but from trapping gophers to theater, and talking about your passion. So I think that is a keeper right there.
Sure.
But I love that. You are absolutely the most eclectic person I know, probably, and I love it. And I love it. So, all right, we have only scratched the surface. We've only heard like one safari story. We're gonna have to bring you back, but in the meantime, if somebody wants to connect with you, they want you to come out to their organization, or they want to be coach, or they want some consultant, whatever it is, or they just want to hear more safari stories.
Yeah.
How can they get in touch with you? I know I put up the QR code for your website, and anybody can take their camera and just hover right over there, and it'll take you. Just click the link, and it'll take you to Steve's website. Beautiful website. Definitely check it out. The one above my head takes you to my link tree. So anything you've ever wanted to know about me, you can find there. But how else can people connect with you, Steve?
Yeah, I mean, the website's great, stevefredlund.com. Email steve@stevefredlund.com. And then I'm on social media, which is pretty easy to find, but you can just email me if you can't find it. But, LinkedIn, Instagram, those are probably the biggest presences that I have. But no, I just love to connect. And if you just want to chat about stuff, I'd love to hear your story too. So I've got an option there to just set up a time with me and hang out.
Awesome. And Jennifer wants to know, when is the next safari?
June of next year, tentatively. So it's been a while because of COVID and all the travel restrictions and that sort of thing. And this one, so just a real quick, I know you want to wrap up here, but our humanitarian work was a project, right? It's a project that we took on for about 18 years, and it's closed. We raised all the funding. We've moved a community of northern Rwanda to self-sustainability. So it's done. So right now we don't have a big humanitarian thing. So this next trip is a safari. Like, that's it. It's a safari. And so right now, tentatively planning on the place that I think is the most peaceful place on earth, Akagera National Park and Lake Ahima. So anyway, I'm just in the early stages of planning that. If it's of interest to people, do reach out. I'm starting to just figure out some of the logistics now, but June of next year is the plan.
This could be the coolest leadership retreat ever.
I thought about that. If you want to put a team together, like if you want to send your leaders on a safari, I've got connections where I can get really, I mean, they're, still cost money, but really discounted flights for groups, really discounted, safari experiences for groups. So we've got those connections from all those other trips. So I think it'd be phenomenal. Send your leaders on this boondoggle. But man, it would be so exciting, so much fun.
Wow. I need permission from my wife, but if she says yes, which she won't, because that means leaving the 5 kids with her. Yeah. But if she says yes, I am there. Who else is going? Put a thumbs up in the chat if you are interested in potentially doing a leadership safari with Steve. You heard it here first. And we're going to come right back to Steve, but Jennifer just spoke up, which was great timing because Jennifer is actually our guest next time. And Jennifer, I put together a rough title, which may change, but I'm so excited to speak to Jennifer next time in 2 weeks from now, same Wednesday, 12 p.m. Eastern time. We're going to be talking about working mothers in a post-COVID world. What does it mean to be a working mother? Why are working mothers more than anybody else burning out, leaving the workplace? We want to talk about these specific women who are asking the question now more than ever, what's my value? Who am I and what is my value? So I cannot wait to talk to Jennifer Schumann, brand expert and photographer, next 2 Wednesdays from now on our next episode. And I hope you all can make it there. and be there
Well, now
live with
I know why
us.
Jennifer wants to go on safari. I mean, she's a photographer. Like
Yeah,
you can't imagine when you're 4 feet from a mountain gorilla or one of them jump up, brush up against you. Like pretty good photo op. Yeah.
yeah, and she primarily, I think, does like headshots. And she's done mine if you like it. Otherwise, she didn't do mine. But if you like my headshot that I use, she did mine, and
She
that's
did
not
she
an
did
easy
great with what
task.
she had to work with. Yeah.
But can you imagine headshots of those gorillas and zebras, and that'd be really cool. So, all right, Steve. First of all, to all of you, thank you so much for tuning in today. And whether you're watching us live or you're catching the replay, continue to add to the chat. Please connect with Steve. He is as amazing of a guy as he came across in this interview. I think when somebody is as authentic as Steve is, he can't not show up as himself. So I really hope that you will reach out to him and connect. If we're not already connected, please connect with me and let's keep the conversation alive. We'll be back here in 2 weeks with Jennifer Schumann. And as Jennifer says, sweet, thank you. That's what I'm thinking. David is in subject, not a gorilla at all. Thank you. And Steve, thank you. This has been such a pleasure. Finally having a more formal chat with you, which in a way broke down barriers and helped me learn even more about you. So thank you so much for being our guest today.
Oh, it's great, man. I loved it. I'm ready to interview you. I have so many questions for you. So we're going to have to flip the switch here at some point.
You got it. You got it. Maybe on Safari.
Yes,
All
sir.
right. All right, Steve, everyone, thanks for tuning in.